Welcome back, everyone. Yehuda Shamroth here from the Miriam Project Geula Hour, from broadcasting live from Ramat Beit Shemesh, Israel. It's evening here now. We just finished 8 days of Hanukkah. It was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful holiday. Probably you don't want to be anywhere else during Hanukkah than Israel. It's so, so beautiful. Um, our English date, of course, is January 2nd. We're into a new secular year as well, 2025. The days have been very dark and rainy over here, although I saw some sun today. But it never, like never before, we were connected to the miracle of Hanukkah, being in wartime ourselves, the miracle of the Maccabees. We feel a lot more allied to this group than we ever did before. I'm sure many people feel that way. We're still standing proud, and we're still strong, and we're still praying for more miracles. And continuing our shirim with Rabbi Pinchas Winston, who so graciously gives us his insights and inspires us weekly about the Geula Shalema, about this week in particular, in search of your true self. We've been working on this for a couple of weeks, learning about this, and I'm sure the Rabbi will give us some insights on the Torah portion this week as well. And please don't forget to check his website, 36.org, and sharnanproductions.org.il. And also, if you want to belong to the Rabbi's WhatsApp group, please just give me a private comment. And we have a WhatsApp group, and we give rabbis inspirational stuff we find all over the internet, and we just send it off weekly. And you can be more in touch with his Torah. And you should go to the website, actually, but if you really just want it daily on your phone, you can have that as well. Thank you for joining us once again, Rabbi.
Thank you. Because we are moving away from Hanukkah now into the rest of the year, Pesach usually follows very quickly after that. It's amazing how fast the time goes before you start cleaning again, but we won't get to that right now. But along that line, I just want to really bring together two ideas. One to do with what we're talking about, finding your true self, and also to do with Hanukkah too, because I began speaking about this last week, and I don't remember exactly, since a lot of the material kind of like just flows off the cuff. It's hard to remember from week to week exactly all the things I said, and also because I say it in more than one place, so I can't remember what I said one place versus another place. So you have to forgive me for repeating myself, but I just find that these things are important to repeat, even if you heard them before. And sometimes it just goes in better the second time. When I mentioned that the Torah says that the Jewish people left Bechi Bezon, and if you ask almost anybody, from someone who has not learned that much, a child in Cheder, to someone who's just new at Torah, to Talmid Chacham, someone who's been learning for many years, why did the Jewish people have to leave Mitzrayim Bechi Bezon quickly? And you will invariably get the same answer pretty much every single time, that the Jewish people were holding on the lowest level of spiritual impurity. You can't live in Egypt for 210 years, basically, and not be affected. In fact, the Medrash says that when the Jewish people were by the Yamsuf, by the splitting of the sea, and the angels, the attribute of justice actually, knew what God planned to do, to split the sea and to save the Jewish people while drowning the Egyptian people, he complained, right, and said it's not fair, because they both worshipped idols. The Egyptians worshipped idols, and the Jewish people in Egypt also worshipped idols. So whatever you're going to do for one, you have to do for the other. Otherwise, it's not fair. And the Medrash says that God came back with a very, very important answer, that he said yes, but the difference was a fundamental difference, and that is that the Egyptians did it metoch shibud, metoch ratzon, and the Jewish people did it metoch shibud. In other words, that the Egyptians chose to worship idols. It was their way of life. That was the way they connected to the spiritual world. They didn't have to, but that's what everyone was doing. That was the thing at that time, and they were doing it. They chose to have all these gods that they had. But the Jewish people did it because of the fact that they were living in exile amongst the Egyptian people for such a long time, and it just wears you down. At some point, the weaker elements bring it in, and someone tries, and somehow it just spreads. And not everybody, but a lot of people. And as a result of that, God had Rahmanis. He said, therefore, I don't hold them as culpable, because of the fact you can only keep the Yetzer Hara and the outside influences away from for only so long before they start to wear you away and soften your position towards things that you really should be very, very strong about. So that was how it was in the beginning, and the Jewish people were therefore on a very low spiritual level, just like Egypt. And as a result of that, if they had stayed any longer, they would have become so spiritually corrupted that there would be nothing really to save. There's nothing to work with at that point. Now, the truth is that doesn't really make sense, because God can do whatever He wants. He can work with anybody and change the situation. So you have to understand things on a deeper level. But thinking on a pshat level, that's what it says. The Jewish people left Mitzrayim quickly, because had they stayed in Mitzrayim a few seconds longer, than minutes or hours, whatever, that would have been catastrophic. But the truth is, even if they left quickly, how quickly can you move 3 million people plus huge amount of Erev Rav, mixed multitude of Mitzrayim? It takes a long time. It's not a question of minutes, hours. They did live miraculously in the end, but at the time you have women, children, you have elderly, you have people who are not healthy. You have to move them. It takes time. So as quickly as they left, they didn't leave, I picked up and went, just like that. So that's one point. But the second point is because that they were no longer anyhow. That was not the reason why they had to leave quickly, because by that time they were no longer in the levels of spiritual impurity. By the last plague, Makas Bechoris, the death of the firstborn, the Jewish people were clear of any spiritual impurity. They couldn't do Korban Pesach otherwise. They couldn't make have their first Seder. I mean, who makes a Seder on Mem Tesh Shari Tumah? Who can do those things? Who can have a sacrifice? Who can walk through Egypt with a sheep, and then tie it to the bed and prepare it, the Egyptian god? Not a Mem Tesh Shari Tumah, that's for sure. Even on the 20th level, you're not going to do things like that. Besides, every Makkah, every plague was a greater revelation of the of God to the Jewish people, and therefore it says in the Meforshim that it was like taking medicine, spiritual medicine. So they went from before the first plague, before God began Makas Dam, the plague of blood in the Nile River and all the sources of water. So then, that's when they were holding. If God hadn't interfered in history at that point, and begun at that early, because it was supposed to be 400 years and it was only 210 years, at that point, with Makas Dam, then we would have been irredeemable from that point onward. But once the plagues began, each plague, by the third plague, even the Chaitumim, the Egyptians and magicians and whatever else Paro had in his court, necromancers and you name it, they were saying this is the figure of God. Okay, they weren't saying the hand of God yet, but at least they said the figure of God. And when they say the figure of God, they meant the God of the Jewish people. So that's the third plague already. And Paro himself is admitting by the fourth and fifth plague and sixth plague, seventh plague. So if he's already seeing it from Hashem, then certainly the Jewish people are seeing it from Hashem. So therefore they were no longer in danger spiritually by the 10th plague. So then the question comes back, why did the Jewish people leave so quickly? If we didn't have to leave, so why did we? Why can't we just linger and leave on our own time? So the answer is brought down that it was to save the Egyptians, not the Jewish people. The Jewish people were saved already. It was to save the Egyptians. Why? Who wants to? We're trying to get rid of the Egyptians. Who wants to save the Egyptians? Why not destroy them while you can? Because if the Jewish people had stayed there longer, the light kept increasing. It would increase so much in the world that it would have ushered in the Messianic era, which is going to happen, God willing, in our time, when the light becomes so intense it just burns up all the evil. It's like having ultraviolet rays to get rid of bacteria or something like that. It just burns it up. It just gets rid of it. So the evil, the Yetzer Hara, all of that stuff would have been gone had the Jewish people stayed a little bit longer. The light kept increasing. So God took the Jewish people out quickly so the light could stay with them. And it wouldn't affect the Egyptians anymore, so evil could continue to exist. But that's not what we want. We want evil to be destroyed. So why would God do a thing like that? So the answer is because we had yet to receive Torah. The Jewish people had not chosen redemption. They had a history to go through. So therefore, they still required free will, and free will requires evil to exist. And since Egypt was the consummate evil empire at its time, it was the representative of the Yetzer Hara in its time. So therefore, by destroying Egypt, destroyed all evil too. And therefore, no free will could exist after that. And that wasn't the master plan. That wasn't what God had in mind. So therefore, evil had to be saved. But the thing over here, which is not Pesach here, we're not going to this issue right now. But the amazing thing is how you can have something that's like so fundamental, so important, get it so backwards, get it so wrong. And there's a few concepts like this, which makes you wonder, about things. And it should, because you have to check out your sources. You have to check out the information. Do we lose anything by getting it wrong with that story? Well, yeah. And it might even be the reason why we're still in exile after 3,000 some odd years. Not really, because everything is planned out by God anyhow. It's all later. But again, on a simple level, it seems like we could leave early. We could finish off history early if we want to. The Gemara itself says so, based upon a drush, not the actual pasuk, but the drush itself says that, and we're certainly led to believe that, and we're certainly meant to try that. You have to try anyhow. Doesn't make a difference what the results are meant to be. You've got to do your best, because you never know. You never know if this is that thing that you thought was so far away, but God always meant it for now, but he gave the impression that it was far away, so you would have to try anyhow against all hope. And it turns out that it was worth it, because in the end it was the success you're trying to achieve in terms of redemption. So yeah, it's important to know the right thing over here. Same thing is true over here as well by Hanukkah time. Shemen. It's all about the oil. It's so about the oil that even the military victory of apparently 12 Chashmonayim against a massive, Avraham fought with one person, Eliezer himself. Right? When you have God on your side, it's Ki'ilu, you have a lot more. And not just that, but as I mentioned before in the past, one of my favorite Tanachi stories is when Elisha and Gehazi are surrounded by Aram, the king of Aram, and his army, who've come to take them and probably torture them and kill them. And Elisha looks and he sees all the troops in the hills. He says, "Boy, are we outnumbered." And that was Gehazi says that, right? And Elisha comes out and says, "No, we're not. We outnumber them." And Gehazi says, one, two. How's that possible? So Elisha doubles to Hashem and says, "Open his eyes." And he opens his eyes, and he's his mind's eye. And all of a sudden he can see all the angels all over the hills surrounding the king of Aram and his army. And he realizes that, yes, they have a miracle coming for them, and they were in fact saved by a miraculous spiritual army. So the fact that there were only 12 Chashmonayim, but they had Siyata D'Shmaya, they had heavenly help. They warranted the heavenly help. Why? Why did they warrant heavenly help? So there's an interesting Gemara. The Gemara says in Brochas on Chuf Amud Aleph, that's 28, that Rav Papa asked Abaya and said, What was unique about the previous generation that miracles happen for them all the time? Don't tell me it's because of their learning, that their learning was better, which is real chiddush, because in Rav Yehuda's generation, not Rabbi Yehuda, but Rav Yehuda's generation, they confined their learning to Nezikin, the laws of damages. Keilu, the others were too complicated, too difficult to learn, or for whatever reason they did that. And we learn all the 6 orders of Mishnayos, including Uksin, which is a very difficult section or technical section to learn, and all the questions of Rav and Shmuel, and the answers. Like our learning is better, he says. That's already quite a bold statement to make, but Gemara doesn't question that part of it. And yet, during a famine, during a drought, when the rabbis would call a fast, Rav Yehuda would take off one shoe only, because you're not supposed to wear shoes during these fast days. And today, we instead, like on Tisha B'Av, for example, we wear non-leather shoes, but some people even wear just their socks and maybe even their bare feet. But he would take off one shoe only. He wouldn't get to the second shoe, and already start to pour rain from Shemaim and end the drought. And we, says Rav Papa, we scream out, we daven, we pray, we do go through all the motions of the fast day, taking off the shoes, putting sackcloth on, ashes on the head, you name it, the Aron HaKodesh in the street, and we scream to God for help, and no one pays attention to us. What's the difference? So Abaya answers by saying that because they were Moser Nefesh, they were self-sacrificing, the Kadesh Shem Shemayim, to sanctify the name of God. Now, I've seen the Gemara a lot of times. It's not hard to see the Gemara. It's at the beginning of Brochas. A lot of people learn Brochas, and it's one of these Gemaras that you quote a lot, you see a lot. And I always learned it for many, many years that was just one statement. They were makadeh, they were moser nefesh lekadeshim shemayim. They come together, go hand in hand. If you're going to be sacrificing your life, then usually it's to sanctify the name of God. So it's hard to believe that the Rav Papa wasn't doing the same thing. I mean, these are Amoraim. These are people who the generation of the Talmud who composed the Talmud, and these were tzaddikim and Talmid Chachamim for whom Torah Torah was their passion and it was their lifestyle, and they gave up so much for it. So how could we say that about them? But that's what the Gemara says. And the Gemara doesn't question that, and the Gemara is happy with that answer, and that's the reason why the rain falls. So it sounds like what we're hearing here, and what people tend to understand from these type of stories, is that if you put yourself out for God, if you go ahead and you struggle to do what God wants to get done, and it's going to cost you either in time, energy, money, maybe even your life. It might be embarrassing sometimes, but you're prepared to do that. And then God looks down and says, wow, look at this person. This person's actually putting themselves out for me. Let me have mercy on them. Let me give them some help. Let me send down some angel or something to help them out to be more successful. It's like the Chashmonaim. 12 of them go out there to fight on behalf of God, to protect Torah. Enough is enough already, right? And they go out, you're going to die. You're going to die. You know that. You certainly can't go out expecting a miracle, because that's not permissible. You have to go out there as Hashem told Daniel to tell Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael that if they go into the furnace, they should know they're going to die. They didn't. God saved them, but they had to go in thinking that they were going to die. Otherwise, it's not. Haran went into the furnace after Avram came out, thinking that he was going to survive. So he didn't, because the miracle doesn't happen like that. You have to be willing to give up your life first and think the miracle is not going to happen. And you can't double think. Well, I know it's, but I'm going to pretend. No, it's no pretending. It has to be, you have to have resolved, yes, I am prepared to die for God. And the Ramchal brings down regarding the Shema, that when you're saying the Shema, that's got to be part of your kavanah. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, is I am prepared to die for you, God, if I have to, if that's what the halacha demands, that's what the situation, that's what you expect, I'm prepared to do that. And he says, every time you think like that, it counts as if you did. That's a big schus. It's a great way to be moser nefesh without actually having to be moser nefesh. But it's only going to work if you're prepared to back it up in actual life. So you have to be real with it in the end. So like the Chashmonaim go out there, and they really believe that they're going to die because the odds are astronomical. They don't expect to win. And a great miracle happens anyhow. So why? Because God said, look, if they're prepared. Now, this doesn't happen for everybody. There's lots of Jews who have died in the process, because that was, Rabbi Kiva, the Chavarah, the 10 martyrs. They all died, sanctifying the name of God. They knew they were going to die. They did it anyhow, right? Shaul went out with his sons to fight the Givonim in a battle, knowing he's going to die. Shmuel told him that, came back from the grave. So that was unfortunate, but that's what history required at that time. But in this case, the Chashmonaim, they survived, and not just that, but then they come back and they immediately, rather than celebrate the victory, which is what we usually do, so they came back and they cleaned up the Beis Hamikdash. They spiritually purified it once again, and of course they ran to light the menorah. They didn't have the menorah yet. They had to build one from, Morris says, once from wood and then from metal. They actually put metal inside of it, I think, and then when they got forward to, they made it from gold again. But they lit it right away. They found the Shem Hazayis and they lit it. And again, the way that we look at that is that really they made the effort, they did the right thing, and then God had Rachmanis and a gift. He sent it down. Not that they're connected necessarily. For example, it's like someone saying to you, if you come over, okay, then I will have lunch prepared. But you have to come over. If you're going to stay home, I'm not going to send the lunch to you. You want to eat together and have a free lunch, right? Which is unusual because there's not usually many free lunches around, right? Free lunch. So come over, and it's waiting for you there. And a person comes in, and sure enough, sitting at the table, beautiful set, and they have a wonderful lunch, right? Or you could say that a person comes over, And since you came by, let me make you lunch. Right? Now, not that you came over and the lunch was waiting for you, the food was waiting for you, it wasn't there. Right? But since you came over, the person it aroused a sense of mercy in your friend whose house it is, right? And they said, well, let me show you something nice back. You showed me something nice by doing what you did. Now let me show you something nice back by my preparing you a wonderful lunch. There's two possible ways. So we learn out the miracle of Chanukah and all miracles, like the splitting of the sea, for example, in Mitzrayim, as if that's what God has done. Oh, you showed up, you came over, you did what you did a nice thing. Let me do a nice thing for you. But that's not the case. That's not the way it worked. That miracle was already there. It was there the entire time, just like the miracle of splitting the sea, already there. There's miracles all around us all the time, already there. So why don't we have them? Why don't they occur for us? Why don't we see them more often? So it's like saying, well, your lunch is here, but it's in the second floor. But there's no ladder. There's no staircase. You can't get to it. But if you can, then you can have it. So that's the difference, a huge difference. And that really answers another question. Again, I don't remember if I spoke about this last week so much, but another important question tied to this parshiot, tied to this whole development process that we're going through. It's all one and the same thing. Yaakov Avinu, his name is changed because he fought with an angel. This angel was the angel of Esav, the Sarshal Esav, the Sitra Achra, the Yitzhahara, exile, but lots and lots and lots of symbolism in this battle. But the most important thing is his name is changed. Well, not officially. It's confirmed by God after the episode in Shechem, but at least it's told to him in advance of that by the angel with whom he fought. And why did he fight this angel? Because he went back over the Yabok River. He was coming back to Israel. The Yabok is a northern tributary of the Jordan, and he had to cross it to get back to Israel. And he's schlepping his family back and forth, everything, they're all on one side, and he left behind something, and he goes back to get it. And the Torah doesn't tell us what he left behind, but the Gemara does. The Gemara says he went back for a pach katan, a small jar. He went back. He went back for a small jar. Who goes back for a small jar? If you're moving your family, so Gemara says, but tzaddikim, they value their property so much that they're prepared to risk their lives for it. Really? I thought that was the definition of a materialistic person, not a tzaddik. And why do they value it so much? Because God forbid they should steal. If they're missing something and they need it, they might steal. A tzaddik, not even a benoni. I mean, when was the last time you were missing something? Let me go next door to my neighbor's house. When he's not looking, I'll take what I need. Who does that? It's certainly not the avos. Certainly not the tzaddikim. Tzaddikim they would rather die and suffer than take someone else's property. So again, these are side discussions, important side discussions, but side discussions nonetheless. That's not the main point. The reason why the Gemara is forced to answer this question is because it's asking the same question we're asking too. Why? What's with the pach katan? So for that we have a medrash. The Alkut Ravenu brings down the Sifsei Cohen, who says the following thing. He says, where did he get this jar from? Where did it come from? Who cares? I mean, Walmart, Amazon online. He had a small jar. Where did you get that small jar? Where'd you get that vase from? If you really like it, you want to get one like that as well. So maybe ask a question like that. But yeah, it's like, okay, a small jar. I mean, people accumulate things. They pick things up along the way. Why not? He worked for Lawton for 20 years and he made money and he had all kinds of servants and animals and livestock. And you name it. So what do you ask with a small jar for? Well, because he goes back for it, making it seem like it's very important. So where did he get it from? What's so important about this jar? Oh, you want to know? Let me tell you. Well, you see, in Parshas Vayetze, when he was running away in the first place, on his way to Lavan's house, right? He camped out on Har Habayis, and that night he had the dream of the ladder, right? Not that he's going to be a fireman one day, but because this shows him Shemayim, and it's actually corresponding to the soul, the 5 levels of soul, and his development, and how you have to be walking in the face of the earth. But we'll come back to that at some point, B'ezras Hashem. But he has this dream, and he wakes up the next morning, and he's so excited about the good news. I mean, there was some bad news in there too, but our 4 exiles. But the overall news was good, that we're going to be redeemed in the end, and we're going to have the land, and Mashiach's going to come, and it's all good in the end. And he was so excited about this good news that he decided to build a mitzvah, a monument to the dream that he had, using stones, actually, I think from the Kedah that Avram used for his father, for Yitzchak, Yaakov's father, and he piled them up. And actually, first he slept on them. It was actually the headstone that he had to lie. That was his pillow, if you can imagine that. But that was what he used for a pillow. And after he built the mitzvah, what do you do with the mitzvah? Once you build the mitzvah, if you can build a mitzvah, you got to do something with it after. You can't just build something of a monument. You need to anoint it with Shem and Zayas. That's what we Jews like to do. We like to anoint kings and priests and the clay Mishkan, because that does something special. That singles it out. That somehow means something very, very important. So, but where is he going to get Shem and Zayas? He got robbed by Eliphaz along the way. Amazon Online was not yet developed. There was no local Makola open at that point in time. He needed Shem and Zayas. His lucky day. Happened to be, he found a small little jar of oil stuck to the stone that he slept on, and he said, wow, this this is like fantastic. Here, I need oil, and there it is. Obviously, it's miraculous, but it was enough of a miracle just to find it. Sound familiar? It was enough of a miracle just to find it. So he takes this oil, and he pours it over the top of the mitzvah, the monument, and then, he but to put the jar back down and leave it behind because it's just a jar, he's got other jars, and he does a double take. Can't believe it. And he looks at the mitzvah. Yes, the oil is on the mitzvah, but it looks like from the jar that there's the oil, nothing was used. So he says, wow, this is special oil. Obviously, it's miraculous oil, so therefore I should take this with it. I'm not going to leave it alone. And the Medrash says, interesting enough, that Hashem said that because you endangered your life, your emotion nefesh for this pach katan, I'm going to reward your descendants in the time of the Chashmonaim with the pach shemen. What's the connection? Because he goes back for once, over 1,000 some odd years. What is the connection? Well, the Medrash answers that question too. The Medrash says that, and every miracle that happened in Tanakh, Elisha with the Shunammite woman, and Eliyahu with Zartit, and every all the different miracles that happened in Tanakh, including the anointing of the Kohanim for the Mishkan and the kings later on, and the clay Mishkan, all with the same jar of oil, just constantly mass produces oil the entire time. And it says not just that, but future miracles will also be done with that. And it doesn't take much of a leap of faith at that point in time to realize that that's the jar of oil that the Chashmonaim found. That's what the Medrash means. Because you worked so hard, you struggled, you endangered yourself to keep this jar in the family, I will make sure it stays in the family, all the way down to the Chashmonaim who are going to find it. And we're making a big deal about the fact that the oil burned for 7 extra days, but the truth is that oil could have burned forever. If it took 20 days to make new oil, it would have burned for 20 days, and Hanukkah would be 20 days long, which is a lot of candles to light and a lot of oil to use. It's only 8 days in the end because that's how long it took to produce Shemen Zayis Zach, pure, clear Shemen Zayis, filtered several times. Oil doesn't move very fast, and then they replaced it because they wanted that's the mitzvah. But the Ner Maravi, that burns consistently, nonstop. It has the same amount of oil the entire time. It never goes out. So the miracle maintains itself the entire time. So that is the connection. This is the same jar of oil that Yaakov found. So if that's the case, then why doesn't the Gemara focus more on the oil than the pach? The pach is like a secondary thing. If you're thirsty, you're going to look for a glass to take some water. You could make a cup with your hands, but that's awkward. You could drink right from the tap. It's like a derech. So you have to. But if you don't have to, it's much nicer, much easier to have a cup. And you could use a cup with holes in it, right? A sieve, it's not going to work. The water goes out too fast. You need the proper kli. Find the proper kli. You put the water in, you can drink but it's not the cup that counts. It's the water. The water is what quenches your thirst. But without the cup, you can't quench your thirst with the water. So the cup is very important. It's got to be the right thing. If you're smelting iron ore, right, you're melting it down 2,000 some odd degrees, right, and you want to pour into some type of a form to make a steel girder or something, then you decide to use wood. It's not going to work. You put it into the wood, it's going to burn the wood right up. You won't get anything out except a mush in the end. You need the proper type of form to be able to hold this metal that it won't melt. So the kli is important. I don't know if you remember, but a long time ago, they used to have these little cone cups. There'd be like a water machine, and but now we have nice plastic cups that hang down, and they're sturdier, right? Some are a little more flimsy than other, but these are these paper cone cups, and they're one-shot deals, one-time deals, basically. Took a drink of water. It was just enough time to drink the water down, and after that, the paper is too soggy, and it can start leaking at that point in time. So the kli is very important, and that's the whole point. That's the whole point. Yeah, the Shem Zayis, hugely important. Obviously, it goes back to Maaseh Bereshis, 100%. It's what the miracle was done with, but that's not what impressed Yaakov. That's not even what impressed the Gemara too, because what it takes a special kli to hold a special oil, a special light. In fact, we are the living example of this idea. A very important Musar lesson, tied to what we're talking about in search for the true self. But Kameh for Chanukah, this is really the message. Because the Kabbalists asked the question about the spheres and about us, because it's really the same idea. Normally, just like I said before, if you pour something very hot into a container that can't handle the heat, it's going to crack, it's going to break. The kli has to match what you're pouring into. But the body is so whole. The body is material. It's so physical. It's Yetzer Hara. It's so gashmi. And the soul inside of you is so holy, so spiritual, so ruchani. How is it possible that your body doesn't burn up because of the soul? It's a real question. I don't think twice about that, because we're living with the reality of the answer. But for those who want to understand, just like lahavdil, quantum mechanics, we don't question about why these weird things happen in subatomic levels. We just know that they do, and we harness them and use them to make our life better. But those people who want to understand, because maybe you can learn something from it, they investigate why is it like that? What's really going on? You have quantum field theory today, and it's like incredible, the mind, the theory. It's all theoretical, but it's amazing. Tend to these questions. What's really going on? Why? Even more so in the spiritual world. So the answer to the question is astounding. And that is, you're right. The body should burn up. It shouldn't be able to. So it's just a miracle? No. That the actual light necessary to make the body originates on a higher level than the light that's used to make the soul inside the body. So even though the body right now is on a much lower level and seems so much lower, don't forget, Adam's body, before the sin, the chet of the Yetzer Daas Tov Ra, the tree of knowledge good and evil, his body was kasnas or with an aleph vav resh. We wouldn't see him today. His body was so spiritual that if he were here, we wouldn't be able to see him with our eyes, because that's how spiritual he is, or was. And then he transformed himself because of the sin until we got this. So now we're so physical. But the body at one point in time was hugely ruchani, on par with the soul, but even on a higher level in its origin. And because of that, it has this potential to be able to hold the soul inside. That's hugely important. And that's part of a good part of the message that Yaakov got from the Pach Katan, why the Pach Katan was so important to him. Because he said, I've now seen that this is special oil. But special oil can't just go into any container. It's a famous story of a daughter of Caesar who was talking to a Tana, I always forget his name, but in the Gemara in Eruvin, actually in Tainus, I think. He was an ugly man. That's what the Gemara says. He was not attractive at all in any way. And she saw him, because apparently, the Romans, they hung out with them, leaders of the Jewish people at that time, somewhat. And she said to him, the Torah is such a beautiful thing. This is God's work. Why would God put such beautiful Torah into such an ugly vessel? So he said to her, I'll tell you what, let me ask you a question. Your father's a lot of wine? Oh yeah, there's lots of wine. Sure, he's a Caesar. He's a ruler. Okay, and what does he put his wine in? Clay containers, right? Kadim, kli cheres. He says, really? It's the king's wine? Such valuable wine, the best wine that in the country. Only shouldn't it be in gold and silver? She says, you're right. That makes more sense. Gold and silver is more valuable. So she has the wine transferred to the gold and silver containers. Of course, the king asked for a glass of wine. They bring wine. I don't know if the whole story actually took place the way the Gemara says it, but take it for granted that it did. We don't have to question that part. And he drinks the wine and says, "Oh, this is terrible wine. What happened? Why?" And he investigates and finds out that the wine's sitting in metal containers, gold and silver. And he says, "Who said to do this?" And she did. Your daughter. Well, who told you to do that? He did, the rabbi. Why'd you do a thing like that? Explain the whole story to the Caesar. And the Caesar's understanding. I mean, it's a lot of wine probably, but he was understanding. And the point that this rabbi was making is that the container has to fit the chomer inside of it. Even though gold and silver is so valuable, it interacts on a chemical level with the wine in such a way as to putrefy the wine, to make the wine taste terrible. But a kli cheres, or a wood cask, right? These are cheap. These are humble materials, so to speak. And yet, they not only preserve the taste, they actually even add flavor to the wine and make it, you go to this very day, you go to a winery and you see these beautiful, beautiful, there's a whole art now to making these wood casks and these certain types of wood that are seasoned a certain way to give, it's like it's a real chachma, real art. And he was saying that's why God put it into me, because I can't be arrogant. I can't assume that people like me because I'm so handsome, because I'm so attractive, so I'm so much chayed. On the contrary, people are almost repelled by me. That makes me humble. And humility is key. Gold and silver, they don't represent humility. They represent gaiva, pride and all those. It's beautiful. We use it. Pride is a wonderful thing if it's channeled in the right direction, for the sake of God. To be proud that you're a Torah Jew, that's okay, because that's a positive thing. It's a Kiddush Hashem. But to be proud of yourself, to take credit for your own gifts, as if that defines you, no, that doesn't fit in. So this is really what Yaakov Avinu learned from these pachim. He said, wow, such simple pach. I would have easily been fooled. Had the oil actually been gone, I spilled it out and there's no oil left over, I would have just trashed these little containers, because that's what we all do anyhow. Just it's used, it's spent, I don't need it, I got other ones, put in the garbage. But now that I see it's containing the Shem Zayas that is miraculous in Lamal Teva, this Kli also must be Lamal Teva, and therefore I have to keep it, and I have to protect it, and I have to guard it. And in some respect, it's more valuable to me than the oil inside of it, because that's the chiddush, that's the real miracle here. And that's really what Chanukah is saying to all of us. It's saying to everybody that don't be fooled by your kli. That's what this body is. Our bodies are kelim. They're vessels for the soul inside. You watch a Baal Tshuva. It's an amazing thing. A guy comes in. I've seen this. I know somebody who was on his way to play in the National Hockey League. That was his life. He was going to leave school and become a hockey player. Yeah, you can make a fortune. Yeah, but not the education's not so great necessarily. That was his life. That was how he was using his kli. His soul was driving him, but he wasn't really aware of it. And happened to be, as a result of Hashgacha Pratis, he ended up in yeshiva instead, and he became a Talmid Chacham in his own right, and a leader on behalf of the Jewish people. And now his body is a much higher level kli. That's what every Baal Tshuva finds out. Every Baal Tshuva is somebody who comes in, and that's why the Greeks were the ones that this war was against specifically, because the Greeks were the ones that said, seeing is believing. The body, what we see That's what counts. And let's beautify that. Let's accentuate that physicality. So we have the Olympics and sports and all these things, and statues on pedestals with the perfect male body and female body, because they were focused completely on the lowest elements of the Kli. And the Jewish people come along and they say, no, no. And that's why we're compared to the Yonah, right? The Yonah is the word Yavan, with, that's Greece inside, but it has a Hey at the end, because the Hey represents Hashem, right? And the soul inside of a person. The Yavan part, that's the physical world, the scientific world, the body. And the Hey is the soul that really determines and tells us how powerful the body actually is. Likewise, the word Sion, which is the namesake of not just the Jewish people, but the Eretz Yisrael, in a state of Gula. It's what the prophets used to describe the ultimate state of redemption and living in Eretz Yisrael and the nation as a whole. That's Sion. But the word Sion has the word Tzadi with Yavan. Again, the same idea. Tzaddik, being righteous, and Yavan. It's a combination of both the physical, the soul, and the body. As the expression goes, it's actually said by a priest, and I kind of, but it's such a beautiful statement anyhow, nonetheless. As the Gemara says, if someone says there's chachma amongst the nations, believe them. And this is a very wise statement. He said that we're not physical beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience, and that changes everything. Because if you're a physical being having a spiritual experience, it means what the Greeks were doing. And the Romans, they had gods, they had religion, they had spirituality. It was part and parcel of their life too. They brought sacrifice and such, but the emphasis was on the body, the goof. And they were complete, that's Hellenism at its peak. And the other way around, though, is that no, we are first and foremost a soul looking for a Kli, and that's why Mashiach hasn't come yet. I mean, he's here, he's in the world. I've not a single doubt about that, but hasn't revealed himself yet. He hasn't. I'll put it this way: one reason he hasn't revealed himself is because he hasn't received the full light yet. And why not? Because that light requires the appropriate Kli. And if you look at Sefer Shmos, it's all about Moshe's development. He starts off on a high level, but he gets higher and even higher until by the time of his death, his soul and body are so close to each other that they don't want to leave each other. Yeah, I mean, the body doesn't want to leave the soul, but the soul not to leave the body, that's an amazing thing. That's a real compliment to the body, because he got back to Adam Rishon before the Chet, or close to it. And that's how you access the Or HaGenuz, because it's inside. But you can't get to that light. The Chashmonayim, because they were Moser Nefesh to save Torah and to act on behalf of God, they went up. They ascended. They refined their bodies. They refined their kelim. Once they did that, they were capable of receiving a higher level of light. That higher level of light put them on a whole different plateau, where the miracle was waiting for them. That was the level of light. And I'll finish with one story that says it beautifully, but they don't always look at this respect, but this is really what it's saying. Famous story where Rabbi ben Dosa's daughter comes to her father and says to him, Abba, I made the mistake of lighting vinegar instead of Shemen Zayis. Now what? It's like, the first time you hear the story is like, Kilu, nothing was burning, but the Gemara says clearly it was burning, and she was concerned. Excuse me. Most of us, what would we do? We'd knock on our neighbor's door and say, come, quick, take a look at this fantastic spectacle that's taking place for me right now. I'm a special person. God did a miracle for me. That's how we would respond. We weren't like all upset, all worried. What's she worried about? Because she's saying to her father, this is clearly a miracle. There's no question about that. Vinegar doesn't burn. And if that's the case, and I don't deserve this miracle, the Gemara says it comes off my schus, my reward in the world to come. I don't want that. It's like cashing your retirement savings plan early. They tax you fully. You do it later on, you get a tax break. I don't want my schar and lam used up in this way. I'd rather sit in the dark on Shabbos with no light than have to take it out. So what do I do? So he answers back and says, it depends upon you. If you understand that the same God who's making that vinegar burn makes oil burn miraculously every single time. Every birth is a new miracle. It's not the old miracle that's now, built. No, there's no teva involved, and you understand that. Then there's no difference between shem and zayis and chometz and vinegar. No difference. It's all the same thing, and it won't come off your reward that will to come. But if you're somebody who believes in teva, you believe that nature is nature. God said, okay, this is the way it's going to be. I don't have to be involved anymore. No. If you believe that, then when the vinegar burns like that, that's called a miracle for you, and you do have to be concerned about that in the end. So that's the difference. Miracles happen for all kinds of people, right? The difference is that someone who rectifies their kli, purifies it, rises it to a higher level, accesses higher level light where nature is miraculous. The miracle is one and the same thing all the time. But if you wait down here and you don't refine yourself and you want the miracle and God does the miracle, that costs. It's not for free anymore. So that's all part of finding out who you really are in essence. B'ezras Hashem will return back to the material next week, but it's all tied together with what we're talking about now here.
Thank you, Rabbi. I do have a quick question about a question about the Or HaGanuz. We've been talking a lot in our circles, probably most circles, about the Or HaGanuz during Hanukkah, and because we know that the Hashem hid the light of creation away for the tzaddikim because other people didn't deserve it, or they might have squandered it, or they might have just used it inappropriately, or distorted, whatever. But you were saying that Or HaGanuz is in each one of us, so that means we all have access to it. Is that correct?
You do, and that's exactly the point. As you refine your body, you know what it's like. If you take a light and put it into a brown paper bag, okay, let's say 5 brown paper bags, the light's not going to come through. But if you put oil on the side of the brown paper bag and make it more translucent, all of a sudden the light starts to come out through the side of it. And you can see it. So the soul that we have inside of us is, and Torah, by the way, same thing. Or HaGanuz. Why can't we access it? Just too many layers on top of it. So when a person finds their body, they become more spiritually. That's what a tzaddik does. A tzaddik is just somebody. A tzaddik is somebody who has done exactly that. They're not simply, I really love this world and I'd rather do vacations and sit in whirlpools and all that, but I'm going to deny myself to be a tzaddik. No. It's no longer things they want to do. They vested themselves of all these things because they're living in such a high plane and they get access to their ganut. Believe me, whatever pleasure we have in the midst of the world, do not come close to the pleasure of having access to our ganut. That is going to be the reward that will become.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi, and thank you everybody for joining us. Have a good week, rest of your week, and good Shabbat, good Shabbos, Rabbi, and good Shabbos everyone else. And please don't forget to daven for the hostages, that they be released soon, and let we see some more miracles left over from Hanukkah through to the new year, new secular year. Thank you. Shalom.